Now, for a conversation on opportunities online, please welcome Bob Kupbens, Vice President of Seller and Marketplace Operations at eBay, and Ethan Arpey, the Marketing Lead for Shopping at Instagram. Here to lead the conversation is Atlantic Managing Editor, Adrienne Green.
Ethan, Bob, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
For having us.
We're here to talk about businesses that are booming because of e-commerce. I want to talk about some of the industries that are using platforms like Instagram and eBay to buy and sell online. Who are these companies?
I mean, like everybody buys and sells online. I think it's such a big question, and eBay has evolved over the years. We're not the eBay that maybe you think you know. 80% of what we sell on eBay is new. 80% is fixed price, and so we sell everything from really new and in-season product to some of these long-tail collectibles, cards, and enthusiast categories. And the crazy thing about eBay, even though we're innovating on behalf of the buyer, we're doing interests, we're on mobile, we've got so many great new buyer-facing experiences. We don't actually own any inventory, so all of our sellers are what are generating that great inventory for buyers. And most of our sellers are small businesses, and so it's this crazy environment where we're connecting small businesses, and I mean real small businesses like sole proprietors and folks with a handful of employees to a global marketplace, and it's a really powerful thing. And I think eBay's evolved a lot, but we're sort of leading, one of the largest online retailers in the world, and leading the charge in helping small businesses grow.
Ethan, I want to bring you in. Instagram is a social media platform first. How did it kind of move into this operating in the shopping space?
Yeah, so a lot of people think of Instagram as a social network, which it is. But Instagram also has a really big business graph. So people come to Instagram to connect with their friends, their family, but also their interests. And it turns out that interests often are tied back to businesses. So if you're really interested, say, in beauty, chances are you might follow a beauty influencer or a beauty brand. Similarly, if you're interested in fashion, you might follow a fashion label. It could be a luxury brand. It could be a mass market brand. And so we see this really robust interest graph that forms tied to businesses. So in fact, 80% of people on Instagram today follow a business. We now have 25 million businesses selling around the world on Instagram today. And that's really because people come to Instagram to discover, to connect. And the fact is that we're a digital or a visual-first platform, and so being able to communicate visually for a business and really tell that story is very effective, especially on mobile. We now have stories where you can take someone behind the scenes as a business and show how you make your products, and we really see that resonate with our community.
Awesome. Bob, you mentioned small businesses.
Yeah.
What makes selling online ideal for small businesses? I imagine that eliminating barriers to entry is kind of the first way in, but what else?
For sure, yeah. I mean, I think what's so interesting about e-commerce right now is that buyers have ever-increasing expectations. And they want to get things fast. They want shipping to be free. They want their purchase to be guaranteed. And so on eBay, we have a guaranteed delivery program. We have a money-back guarantee. We have an authenticate program for some of our high-end luxury goods. We have free returns in a large number of cases. And yet, sellers don't always necessarily do those on their own. So for us, our challenge is how do we create the tools and the technology and the platform so that these sellers can easily get on and they can easily provide these great buyer experiences. And so that's what we do every day. It's funny, you see sellers who didn't think they could do free shipping, who didn't think they could do guaranteed delivery, who didn't think they could do free returns, finding that they're growing and growing and growing their business because of creating some of these new capabilities. And we enable that through the platform for them. It's really great to see that ecosystem grow.
I see you shaking your head, Adrienne.
Yeah, no, I mean, so like on Instagram, it's a very similar thing. Is people come to discover, it could be any type of business really, and when they discover that business, they want to be able to take that next step. And so really, what we're thinking about doing is how if you discover something, whether it's an interesting product or an interesting brand, how can you take that next step and get all of the information you need to make that purchase? And so that's really where we're investing, and we think it's going to be a really interesting opportunity going forward.
It's interesting that you mentioned discovery, because when most people think of shopping, old school shopping, it's shopping with intention, right? I need a new pair of jeans, I need some new eyeliner. But Instagram really is leaning very much into this discovery space. How did that thinking evolve?
Well, really the way we think about building our products is we look at and see what is actually happening on Instagram today and how can we build products to enable that. And so what we saw were people were discovering brands, they were discovering businesses, but then they couldn't take that next step. So they were taking a screenshot of a product and bringing it into a local store and saying, hey, is this product still available? Or they were in like the comment section were saying things like, oh, is this available in my size? And so we knew that discovery was really, really big, but we knew the biggest pain point then was like moving kind of down what we call the marketing funnel into consideration, into purchase. And so right now the big focus is on this idea of discovery, but then enabling that deeper step.
I remember the days in Instagram where you had to kind of slide into the DMs and ask for a shade of lipstick being available or something like that.
Discovery is a really interesting point. I mean, we've looked at some of the key categories that we operate in. You know, we're big in electronics. You know, we're big in home and garden. You know, we're big in parts and accessories, and obviously the long tail collectible items, comic books, and trading cards, and that one-of-a-kind. We were talking earlier about the spoon that went down the disposal that's from the set that you can only find on eBay to replace it. But we've done some real cool innovation, like in the case of parts and accessories, you can now shop on eBay based on the manual for what you want to do to repair your car. So if you need a tail light, and it's like, I don't know what that's called, you click on a picture and all of a sudden you can discover that. And we've done some really interesting things to try to help buyers find their way into those experiences, and it's really centered around these communities of interest in a similar way.
Yeah, I want to talk about innovation, especially with eBay. You've kind of mentioned a bunch of times that you are operating in a different space and it's not your grandfather's eBay. How are you guys thinking about innovation moving forward, especially as there are more and more people in the marketplace that are doing kind of online retailing?
Well, I mean, look, I think the challenge is how do we keep up with and meet and exceed buyers' expectations? And so, again, things like what are the programs that we can make sure that when buyers come, they get what they expect. They get the product that they expect, they get it on time, they get it at a great price, and they get it with free shipping, and they get it with a return policy and money back. Like, those are the things that any of us, as we're shopping online, expect. And so, we just continue to find ways to make that easier for our sellers to deliver. We've done some interesting partnerships with social media where we've given people the opportunity to promote their own products on social media, and if they do that, then they get some advantages on the platform. And I think we look at a lot of ways to try to find, I guess, shortcuts for sellers to make sure that they're able to deliver what we expect them to. Like, we integrate with our different shipping providers. We've created just all sorts of new capabilities that give them the ability to operate and get their small business out into a scale of 170 million customers all over the world.
And so when you're thinking about scale, and you mentioned all over the world, I really want to talk about how your companies interact with the global markets as you're kind of developing your relationships with these businesses. Are you entering new demographics? Are you finding that different types of users are using your products? How are you seeing that change?
So at Instagram, what's really interesting is, it's a Silicon Valley-based company, but it's also a global company. 80% of our users are actually outside of the United States. So a large part of the commercial activity is happening internationally, not necessarily here, but overseas. What we're also seeing, which is fascinating, is this idea of cross-border commerce. So because Instagram has a community of 1 billion people, as a business, if you decide to set up shop on Instagram, you can immediately start exporting because you now have a customer base that's all over the world. And this is an incredibly powerful tool, and this is something that never could have existed 5, 10 years ago. A lot of these businesses don't have websites, they don't have storefronts, because it's expensive. Why would you invest in a storefront or a website when you can reach 1 billion people for free on an existing platform? So that's really interesting, this idea of cross-border commerce and how like a platform like eBay or Instagram is actually like enabling people and businesses to connect all over the world.
We created a thing called the Global Shipping Program, and our big markets, are the US and UK and Germany and Australia, and if you're a small business in the US, just with a handful of employees, you may not know or have the ability to get into those markets or understand how to ship globally or manage customs. And so we created this global shipping program so you can ship into a warehouse in Kentucky and then we handle everything from there. So it's really, really amazing that a small business can immediately scale to a global audience in a really powerful way through the technology and the platform that we've created. It's powerful, and we actually extended it to local as well. We did a program, we've created a program called Retail Revival. So many small local physical businesses are struggling with challenges in retail, and so we went into Akron and we went into Lansing, and we worked with those communities to get sellers who were primarily physical-based businesses online and connected to our 170 million customers all around the world. And that program, so local all the way through global, has been an important part of how we've looked at connecting people across the globe.
So you've worked with markets big and small, just like you've mentioned, you both have. How are you thinking about the future of e-commerce, given that it's kind of stratified in that way? Is it different? Is the future of small businesses interacting with the web and online selling, is that different from how global companies are thinking about it? And how does the future of work look that way?
Yeah, so the way we're thinking about this is we see this passion to business story unfold on Instagram all the time, all over the world. There are people who have day jobs, and they don't like their day jobs, and they have a hobby, and they take that hobby, and maybe they're baking bread, or maybe they're into fashion, and they start creating clothes that they start sharing on Instagram. People start liking and commenting and ask if they can buy it. And what we're starting to see is that these people are transitioning away from just being a pure passion-based hobby to actually turning that into a business. And we're seeing this happen all over the world. And so it just lowers that barrier to entry to creating a business. So more people are more willing to experiment. You don't have to quit your job to essentially start a business. You can have your side hustle, and then you can turn that actually into a business on Instagram because you can reach those 1 billion users and start selling your products. So we really see this lower barrier to entry is creating this thriving opportunity of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it really has changed the way I think people think about what their job is or what they want to do. I've had a number of interactions with sellers, and these stories are so uplifting. Like, oh, I was doing this kind of dead-end job, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but just something that wasn't their passion. And they discovered that they found a few things that they wanted to sell on eBay, and then they found a few more, and they turned that into a small business, and then they were like, hey, actually I can do this full time and really start to grow a business, and they started hiring employees. And so you see this transition from folks who were consumer sellers, one-off, like all of us individually cleaning out the garage, and then that turned into, for a lot of them, a passion, and turned into being a part of this community of sellers that can reach folks around the world. And it's funny, the dinner I had last week, one of them was going to be a brain surgeon, one of them was going to be a police officer, so we've taken at least a brain surgeon and a police officer out of the workforce and put them in as sellers on eBay, which, I don't know, you could argue that that's good or bad. We probably need brain surgeons too, but their passions were more around retail and customer service and giving them the platform to be successful in doing that, and having that be a full-time job is really different than the access that they would have had in the past.
Something you mentioned, which I thought was interesting, is this idea of communities. So there are these communities of support that exist on Instagram where if you're a florist, say you're a florist in Dallas, you can get inspiration from florists all over the world. And you see these communities of support pop up where someone in Dallas is getting inspiration from a florist in Brazil, and they're developing that relationship. They're cross-promoting each other's businesses. So you see these communities of support pop up because there are these networks of entrepreneurs that are forming and that can support each other. So that's a really interesting trend that we're also seeing.
Yeah, the history of eBay has been around communities as well. I mean, we have meetup groups around the country. We have seller groups. We run a big event over the summer called eBay Open where we bring a bunch of our sellers together. And so this idea of it's not eBay talking to sellers in a one-on-one interaction. It's more of a group setting where sellers can learn from each other, grow together, figure out how to leverage the platform, what works best for them in their industry. And we find that very powerful. And in a lot of cases, we find really, really big sellers are teaching some of the smallest sellers, even when they, in theory, would be competitive, they're teaching them how to operate and be successful because there's so much space and so much opportunity on a platform like eBay or Instagram.
That's interesting, because we see the opposite with small businesses actually inspiring larger businesses. Because around creativity, sometimes there can be like diseconomies of scale. Basically, like if you're a big business, there's a CMO, there's a whole marketing division. Like a lot of like really good ideas can like die through committee. When you're a small business, you can actually pull out your phone and be your own creative director and your own CMO. And so you see a lot of innovation and creativity actually coming from the small businesses. And then the big businesses are like, how can I do that? Which is really interesting. So you actually see these partnerships forming with bigger businesses and smaller businesses, where the bigger businesses are turning to the smaller businesses for inspiration.
Absolutely. I think we have one moment for one question right here in the center. Right here at the center.
Organization. Sure. I'm Robin Ree from Adrienne, a brand strategy firm. And we're also very interested in live and community building, so it's very interesting to hear about eBay Live, if that's what it's called.
eBay Open, yeah.
And that question to the gentleman from Instagram, have you convened or thought about convening a live engagement with your communities?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we have a program called Instamarkets, and essentially what we do is we will bring a set of digital-first sellers, and we'll bring them into what we call like a community space, where we then invite the community to actually buy from them. So this is about bridging the kind of online to offline world and really recognizing the businesses that make Instagram successful. So we've done this all over the world, and it's really about making these relationships between the businesses and the customers that love them.
Well, Bob, Ethan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.